Did you know there's a low-level elemental summon that, when upcast, can surpass Fireball's damage on single targets every turn? Or that with the right setup your elementals can nearly double in monks or barbarians' bludgeoning output? And that one of them can even slow enemies to a quarter of their speed, letting you kite them across the battlefield? Welcome to part 3 of the Summoner's Handbook, where we break down Flaming Sphere, Conjure Minor Elemental and Conjure Elemental in all their details. If you like deep analysis and smart build crafting, consider subscribing and let's get into it. Flaming Sphere is a level 2 conjuration spell that requires concentration. In fact, it's the only summon spell in Baldur's Gate 3 that does. The sphere lasts for 10 turns and can be upcast for additional damage. It deals an extra 1d6 fire damage for each level above the second. It becomes available at class level 3 for Druid, Wizard and Light Domain Clerics as a domain spell, and at a class level 8 for Arcane Tricksters and Eldritch Knights. The summon itself has 20 HP and a lot of resistances, which makes it surprisingly durable for a level 2 spell. The Flaming Sphere cannot be healed and has 2 active effects. The first is Aura of Flame. When toggled on, the sphere emits an aura that deals 2d6 fire damage to any creature that ends its turn within a 2-meter radius. While active, the sphere also leaves a trail of burning ground as it moves. The trail causes burning to creature that pass through it. The second is Ram, its default attack. You can slam the sphere into a target that deals 2d6 fire damage, halved on a successful dexterity save. Both the Ram and the aura scale with upcasting. Each spell level above the second adds plus 1d6 fire damage to both effects. In theory, Flaming Sphere has incredible damage potential. A 4th level cast of the spell would deal up to 8d6 fire damage per turn, half from the aura and half from the Ram attack, and can threaten multiple enemies at once, but that's where the problems begin. First, while the aura's listed radius of 2 meters might sound decent, it's important to understand how it's actually calculated. The 2-meter radius is measured from the center of the sphere, not from the edge of its visual model. Since the sphere's mesh is nearly as large as the radius itself, the effective distance between the surface of the sphere and the edge of the aura is very small, just a fraction of a meter. In practice, this means that most medium-sized enemies can attack the sphere using standard melee weapons like swords, maces or hammers without ever entering the aura and triggering its damage. You can see this interaction clearly if you cast Shrink on the sphere. The spell reduces the size of its mesh, but the aura radius remains the same. This effectively increases the space between the sphere's surface and the edge of the aura, which forces enemies to get closer and finally step into the damaging zone. Second, if the enemy does enter the aura, they only take damage if they end their turn inside it. So if they can move even slightly, they will often step out before the turn ends. And they almost always will. Even when enemies ignore your entire team due to Sanctuary, stealth or heavy armor, they still tend to avoid the sphere's aura if possible. Third, while some players claim it's great for blocking choke points due to its large base, this is unreliable. In testing, some enemies simply walked through the sphere as if it had no collision, completely bypassing it to reach the rest of the party. The one strategy that does work is combining it with crowd control. If you can freeze enemies in place using spells like Hold Person or Command, then the sphere can finally do what it's meant to: burn enemies alive in its aura. While the damage can be decent, especially early game, the Ram attack alone starts to fall off quickly if you're not getting value from the aura. And since it requires concentration, it often competes with higher priority spells once you move beyond level 2 slots. Even worse, the sphere always uses Wisdom as its spellcasting stat, which means the save DC is tied to the caster's Wisdom modifier. For some classes, that makes it far less reliable. Light Domain Clerics and Druids are the only ones that can truly maximize its effectiveness. If Larian were to make a few tweaks, like applying the aura damage in the way Firewall does through an overlap trigger, or tying the save DC to the caster's primary stat, Flaming Sphere could easily become a very strong contender that competes with concentration spells of higher level. As it stands, it's a decent early game tool with potential, but often more hassle than worth it. That said, there are moments of brilliance. If you manage to cast multiple spheres from different party members and surround an enemy, you can sometimes pin them down and watch the aura melt them in place. And depending on how the enemy's pathfinding and collider interactions behave, the blocking tactic might occasionally pay off. But for the most part, if you're not locking enemies down somehow, outside of levels 3 to 4, where it can actually shine, Flaming Sphere just can't compete with higher level concentration spells. Conjure Minor Elemental is a 4th level spell that allows you to summon an elemental creature. It becomes available at class level 7 to wizards, druids and Circle of the Land druids from the Arctic or forest terrain. This spell can summon one of 3 variants: an Azer, a pair of ice Mephits, or a pair of mud Mephits. Like most summon spells, all these variants share a single instance, meaning you can only have one version active at a time. Casting the spell again will replace the previous elemental. The Azer is a dwarf-like creature made of metal and fire, with glowing flame for hair and a massive hammer in hand. It has 39 hit points and has an incredible 20 armor class, which is extremely high for a 4th level summon, rivaling even a buffed Earth Myrmidon. While it doesn't have any innate resistances, you can buff your summons with resistances later on through spell and item synergies. Its main hand attack deals 5 to 17 damage, and it comes with multiple battle maneuvers that add utility and damage over time effects. One of its strongest tools is Searing Smite, which deals 6 to 23 initial damage and applies a burning debuff that deals 1d6 fire damage per round. This debuff requires concentration to maintain and can only be used once per fight. The Azer also has 2 weaker strikes that deal each 4 to 7 damage and apply debuffs. The first is Weak Grip, which targets enemies holding weapons. If they fail a strength saving throw, they gain disadvantage on attack rolls and strength saves. This can be used once per short rest. The second is Backbreaker. If the enemy fails a strength saving throw, they are knocked prone for 2 turns. Another ability, Concussive Smash, causes the dazed condition on a failed constitution save, preventing reactions for a turn. This can also be used once per short rest. Finally, the Azer has a bonus action called Overheat. It deals 1 to 10 fire damage in an area around it and applies a burning status that deals 1 to 10 damage per turn for 3 rounds on a failed DC 15 save. This can be used every turn. Overall, the Azer is a strong and unusual tanky summon for its level. Its armor class helps it shrug off many attacks, and its stacking burn effect give it more damage potential than you might expect at first glance. That being said, its 39 HP are still limited. It also doesn't work well in Azer groups. The damage over time effects don't stack if you have multiple Azers, and their area burn aura can cause friendly fire. This makes them hard to manage in groups. While their special debuffs sound interesting, many are highly situational and can result in weaker output than simply hitting with the default attacks. The Azer works best as a frontliner, leading the charge and dealing area damage with its aura. It's not game-changing on its own, but its durability make it a valuable asset in drawn-out encounters. Ice Mephits are winged cold elementals that lean heavily into ranged attacks and terrain disruption. Each Ice Mephit has 21 hit points and a fragile 11 armor class, so you will want to keep them well out of reach. Their basic attack deals 4 to 17 cold damage, and they have flight for better positioning. They come with 3 distinct abilities. The first is a variant of Chromatic Orb, which deals 2 to 16 cold damage and creates an ice surface. On impact, the target must pass a DC 12 dexterity save or fall prone. The save is instantly triggered when they were not already standing on ice. Only the creature directly targeted by the spell takes damage. It's not an AoE damage spell. The second ability is Ice Breath, a cone-shaped area of effect attack that deals 2 to 12 cold damage, halved on a successful dexterity save against DC 12. This also creates an ice surface, and creatures hit must pass the save to avoid slipping. Lastly, Ice Mephits explode on death. This also can be triggered manually, dealing 4 to 24 cold damage, halved on a DC 11 save. Ice Mephits are primarily ranged attackers, and while their damage is slightly lower than skeleton archers, their ice surfaces can disrupt melee-heavy enemies trying to approach. Their mobility also makes them hard to pin down if the enemy lacks good ranged ranged options. One synergy worth mentioning: if you combine an Ice Mephits frozen surface, which has already made into a water surface with fire damage, such as from a fireball or fire elemental, it creates steam clouds. These can wet nearby enemies, which not only boosts cold damage further, but also enables combos with lightning casters. This can double the Mephits damage output when set up correctly. Without these team synergies, their overall performance is more modest, but with buffs and wedge status support, 2 Ice Mephits can rival the output of 3 skeleton archers. Be cautious, and tight corridors are chaotic fights. They die easily if you can't protect them. Mud Mephits are hit-and-run attackers that specialize in debuffs and terrain control. You summon 2 of them with a spell, each has 18 hit points and 11 armor class, and they can also fly. The default Claw attack deals 4 to 19 damage, which is solid and the same as the Ice Mephit. The first ability, Mud Fling, is a basic ranged attack dealing 2 to 5 damage, but it comes with no secondary effects. More important is Mud Breath, which creates a muddy terrain in a cone-shaped area. It deals no damage, but on a failed dexterity save against DC 12, the target becomes muddy, a powerful debuff that cuts movement in half. This effect stacks with a movement reduction that is applied from the difficult terrain that the spell also creates. Furthermore, it applies disadvantage on attack rolls and dexterity saves, and grants advantage to attackers hitting them. It also seems to suppress enemy attacks of opportunity, allowing the Mephits, after muddying their target, to close in, attack, and fly away unscathed. Although this is not documented in-game, so it might have a general effect on enemy reactions. The muddy condition lasts for 2 turns, but will clear at the start of the target's next turn, if only 1 turn is left on the counter, meaning you will want to refresh it before it hits that final turn. Muddy also extinguishes burning effects and grants fire resistance, which make it impractical to combo Mud Mephits with fireball casters. Finally, like Ice Mephits, Mud Mephits explode on death, or can be detonated manually. Their death burst applies Muddy again in an area, with a slightly higher save DC of 13. These creatures shine when fighting melee-focused enemies, as they can kite them endlessly using movement control. Their Muddy debuff is incredibly potent, single-handedly replacing terrain control spells from casters. However, they are extremely squishy and vulnerable to range attacks, and if you can't land those Muddy debuffs, it's game over for them. Each of the 3 elemental variants brings something unique. The Azer is by far the most durable option, and has decent single target and a little bit area damage if he can stack his burning dots. That said, it doesn't synergize well with low armor class party members or summons. If enemies have easier targets to hit, they will often ignore the Azer entirely. And if it's not soaking attacks, its high AC isn't doing much, and then it's not contributing to the fight. It does, however, make a reliable frontline in situations where you plan to hang back, whether you are using Sanctuary or staying in stealth. It can also work alongside other Azers, but keep in mind that damage over time effects don't stack. If you summon multiple Azers, they will need to focus on different targets to be effective. Ice Mephits are ranged damage dealers with some crowd control added on top. They excel in group fights where they can profit from party buff. They scale strongly with sweat debuffs, but without support they can feel underwhelming. Mud Mephits are melee control specialists. If their Muddy debuff lands, they can shut down enemy melee units, allowing them to engage in hit and run tactics while your team can focus fire. But if enemies can make their saves, they become little more than fragile distractions. In most scenarios, Ice Mephits are the default pick. They are safe, ranged and disruptive. But if you're dealing with slow melee enemies or want to buy time for setup, Mud Mephits are surprisingly strong. And if you want a summon to engage in melee and hold position while you buff or heal from safety, Azer is a good choice. Overall, Conjure Minor Elemental is a very flexible spell. Each option has real strength. And if used well, they can punch well above the 4th level spell slot they come from. Conjure Elemental is a 5th level spell, available at level 9 for wizards and druids. Bards can learn it at level 10 through magical secrets, and warlocks can access it via the Minions of Chaos Eldritch Invocation at level 9. This spell lets you summon one of the 4 elemental types, an air elemental, earth elemental, fire elemental or water elemental. If you have access to a level 6 spell slot, you can upcast Conjure Elemental to summon the more powerful elemental Myrmidons. These include the air Myrmidon, the earth Myrmidon, the fire Myrmidon and the water Myrmidon. All elementals have access to elemental warp, allowing them to teleport every turn as a bonus action. This makes them highly mobile. All elemental summons share a common mechanical structure. With the exception of the Air Elemental, each one has a basic melee attack that applies a unique status effect. This effect isn't just for utility. It directly interacts with the Elemental's multi-attack, unlocking increased damage when the target is afflicted by the corresponding status. Most Elementals apply their trigger effect through their basic attack, but the Air Elemental is an exception. It relies on a separate ability to inflict its status, making its setup less consistent by comparison. Each Elemental's multi-attack consists of 2 unarmed strikes. On their own, these punches deal solid base damage. However, when the target is afflicted by the Elemental's associated status effect, such as burning, chill, prone or shocked, the multi-attack damage is significantly amplified. In many cases, this escalation can be taken even further by layering in damage vulnerabilities, pushing the Elemental's output far beyond what their level might suggest. Because of this, even though base Elementals are summoned with a lower level spell slot than their Myrmidon counterparts, their potential damage can rival or even surpass them through proper setup and party coordination. The Fire Elemental is a manifestation of living flame. Stat-wise, it's relatively fragile for a summon of this level, with only 102 hit points and an armor class of 13, and immunity to fire damage, but no resistance to physical or other elemental types. Its basic melee attack deals low base damage, but automatically applies burning on hit with no saving throw required. This status effect not only adds damage over time, but also serves as a trigger for the Fire Elemental's multi-attack synergy. Like all Elementals, the Fire Elemental's multi-attack consists of 2 punches. On their own, the damage is respectable, but if the target is already suffering from burning, the Fire Elemental's damage dice are doubled. The Elemental's multi-attack includes both bludgeoning and fire damage. The bludgeoning portion can be further amplified through the brittle status effect, which can be applied by the Water Elemental, which we will cover in that section. Fire vulnerability, on the other hand, is much harder to exploit in practice. While Arsonist's All and sequencing with Wet and Destroy Water can technically set it up, its availability may be limited, especially if you're not relying on pickpocketing to stockpile them. The Fire Elemental also has one activated ability, Erupting Cinder, a 2-meter explosion that deals 4d6 fire damage and leaves behind burning ground for 1 turn. While this ability might sound useful on paper, its effectiveness is held back by a low saving throw DC of 11, making it unreliable for consistent damage output. The average damage from Erupting Cinder tends to be around 7 per target after successful saves, which is underwhelming. Worse still, the surface it creates disappears after a single round, limiting its utility as a reliable method for spreading burning. That said, the burning ground left behind can still serve a tactical purpose when paired with the Water Elemental's frost-based abilities, as we will explore in that section. In summary, the Fire Elemental is not a standout area damage dealer. Its AoE spell is too unreliable and too weak to carry fights, and its durability is relatively low. However, in focused single targets combo scenarios, especially when paired with other elemental summons, it can contribute high single target damage numbers. Its true value lies in its ability to apply the burning condition. Still, this role can easily be fulfilled by player characters, making the Fire Elemental a strong burning enabler, but ultimately a replaceable one. The Water Elemental is a swirling mass of liquid force summoned not just for damage but for battlefield control and high impact combo setups. Its true value lies in its ability to create ice surfaces, knock enemies prone and trigger powerful vulnerability effects that elevate both its own damage and that of your party. Its base stats are solid for a level 5 summon, 114 hit points, 14 armor class and resistances to both physical and acid damage. The Water Elemental's basic melee attack deals modest damage but leaves behind a water surface. More importantly, though not documented in the tooltip, it also applies chill to each target hit, with no saving throw required. This deceptively simple attack is the cornerstone of multiple synergy chains. For example, the water surface it leaves behind can be ignited by a Fire Elemental's Erupting Cinder or any other source of burning ground, such as Chromatic Orb. This creates a steam cloud that inflicts the wet condition. If the enemy was already chilled by the default attack, this interaction upgrades the debuff to Frozen until the start of the enemy's next turn. During this window, the target becomes vulnerable to 1 instant of bludgeoning, thunder or force damage, allowing for a short burst of amplified damage before the Frozen status breaks. However, freezing the enemy is not the ideal setup for the water elemental's own multi-attack. The first cold strike from its multi-attack will break the frozen status, removing the effect and ending the vulnerability window prematurely. Instead, chilled itself is a correct trigger for the water elemental's multi-attack bonus. When attacking a chilled enemy, all of its damage dice are doubled. This makes the water elemental a strong standalone damage dealer even before factoring in its utility. Its active abilities Winter's Breath is a wide cone-shaped AoE that brings both crowd control and combo potential. On impact, it creates an ice surface beneath affected enemies. If they are standing on normal terrain, they must immediately make a DC 16 dexterity save or fall prone. But that's just the start. If the target is burning, Winter's Breath extinguishes the flames and applies a brittle instead. For 3 full turns, they do gain a highly exploitable weakness, vulnerability to bludgeoning and thunder damage. Brittle also causes minor damage over time and forces a DC 16 saving throw at the start of each turn to remove the debuff. This is where the water elemental shines as a combo driver. It not only deals high damage itself, it primes enemy for devastating follow-up from other summons or party members using thunder spells, monk fists, thrown hammers or halflings, or blunt instruments, maces and chairs. Every elemental except the air elemental deals bludgeoning damage as part of their multi-attack, and even the air elemental's ranged ability benefits from brittle, making this debuff a universal damage amplifier across your summon elemental roster. The water elemental is the heart of the brittle combo chain, amplifying the damage of all 5th level Conjure Elemental minions while providing excellent battlefield control and high personal output. It's arguably the most tactical, flexible summon at this level. The air elemental is a swirling vortex of wind and force. It functions as a hybrid attacker combining range pressure with strong burst potential in melee, making it one of the more flexible elementals in terms of engagement options. In addition to elemental warp, it has natural flight, giving it unparalleled battlefield reach among non-Myrmidon summons. Stat-wise, it's moderately fragile, 90 HP, 15 armor class, resistances to physical, lightning and thunder damage, immunity to poison. While its durability is not very high, it can still survive for a decent time, especially when staying mobile and attacking from range. Its default attack is unique among the elementals, a twin projectile that deals thunder damage and forces a dexterity saving throw against DC 15. This is the only basic elemental attack that does not apply a status effect directly. However, it benefits greatly from enemies being brittled, doubling its thunder damage and turning it into a reliable source of ranged burst when set up properly by a water elemental. The air elemental's multi-attack consists of 2 melee strikes that deal lightning and slashing damage. If the target is affected by shock, the multi-attack's damage dice are doubled. Unlike other elementals, however, the air elemental has trouble consistently applying its own trigger condition. Its active ability, Primordial Gales, is a small point-blank AoE that deals 2d6 lightning damage, forces a strength saving throw against DC 10, and has a chance to apply shocked in a short radius. Unfortunately, the low save DC makes shocked application unreliable. This inconsistency makes the air elemental the only summon in this tier that struggles to reliably activate its multi-attack bonus on its own. That said, the shocked status has a valuable side effect. It prevents reactions, which can be tactically useful. In terms of synergies, the lightning portion of its multi-attack can be doubled against wet enemies, while the air elemental cannot apply wet itself. It can take advantage of setups from other party members or elemental combos. For instance, a fire elemental casting Erupting Cinder on a water surface creates a steam cloud that wets nearby enemies. Because wet can also be inflicted by items or spells from other characters, you don't need a full elemental team to unlock this synergy. Where the air elemental stands out most is in mobility and range capability. It's the only base elemental that can reliably engage targets at a distance, not counting Erupting Cinders because that doesn't do much for damage. However, this flexibility comes with trade-offs. Without wet and shocked from Primordial Gale, its multi-attack damage is not that great. And unlike other elementals, it has no as reliable method of triggering its own multi-attack damage bonus. Because all elementals can reposition freely with elemental warp, the air elemental's ranged niche is rarely essential. And once the Myrmidons become available, the air elemental is largely outclassed. The earth elemental is a towering construct of stone and soil, seemingly designed to serve as the frontline bruiser of the elemental roster. On paper, it fits the role well with 129 hit points and a solid armor class of 17. Surprisingly, however, it has no resistances at all, not even to physical damage. While this lack of resistances keeps it from matching the game's tankier summons outright, its high HP pool and armor class still make it a durable presence. With the right gear or buffs, you can easily compensate for its defensive shortcomings. Its default melee attack hits relatively hard and creates a mud puddle on the ground. If the attack connects, it automatically knocks enemies prone with no saving throw. This is a powerful combination. On the enemy's next turn, they will be forced to stand up, consuming half their movement, and will then need to wade at least 1 meter through the mud, further increasing their movement cost. Its multi-attack consists of 2 strikes that deal only bludgeoning damage, and unlike other elementals, it lacks a secondary elemental damage type. This slightly lowers its overall damage potential, but also means it benefits fully from the brittle status provided by the water elemental. The earth elemental's multi-attack doubles its damage against prone enemies, but this bonus only applies if the prone condition was inflicted by an earth elemental, not from other sources like spells or environmental effects. Fortunately, its own basic attack reliably fulfills that condition. Its active ability, Seismic Strike, is a point-blank area of effect attack that attempts to push enemies away, applies Trembling Legs, reducing movement speed by 2.5 meters and lowering dexterity by 1, and unfortunately suffers from a very low save DC of 9, making it unreliable in practice. At first glance, the Earth Elemental may seem underwhelming. Its ability DCs are low, it lacks resistances, and its damage appears modest compared to other summons. But this summon excels in disruption and lockdown, not burst damage. While it doesn't initiate combo chains like the Water Elemental, it excels in its intended role, locking down high priority targets by repeatedly applying no-save prone effects and threatening them with punishing attacks of opportunity. With access to Elemental Warp, the Earth Elemental can swiftly pursue targets across the battlefield, consistently knocking them down and restricting their movement. And when all conditions align, specifically when a target is both prone and brittled, its multi-attack damage can still easily surpass 60 damage per round. In the right setup, this Stonebrute becomes a devastating mauler. If you haven't unlocked Myrmidons yet, the base elemental summons still offer a wide range of powerful options, each with distinct tactical roles and synergy potential. Air elementals are your go-to pick for ranged firepower, though they fall short of excelling in that role. Their Twin Thunderblast is solid when paired with Brittle, but they struggle to reliably trigger their own shock effect to enable their melee combo. Air elementals do pair well with other ranged summons like Ice Mephits or Skeleton Archers, especially in terrain control strategies using spells like Spike Rose, Hunger of Hader or Web. Just be aware that once Water Myrmidons become available, Air elementals are significantly outclassed in their ranged role. Earth elementals are excellent for zone control and area denial. Their basic attack reliably knocks enemies prone with no saving throw and leaves behind mud, which further slows movement. They are especially effective against fast-moving enemies since they don't rely on movement-triggered effects to control the battlefield. Earth elementals pair exceptionally well with mud Mephits, stacking knockdowns with slow debuffs for brutal crowd control. And because Earth elementals' attacks of opportunity have high hit chances and also prone on hit, they help protect vulnerable units like Mephits by locking down enemy movement. Water elementals are arguably the most tactical, flexible and impactful of the bunch. They bring powerful control through ice surfaces, and they are the only elemental that can enable half of their own multi-attack damage vulnerability without outside help. The other half, bludgeoning, is easily covered by Brittle, which they can trigger in combo with burning sources. While they don't block path as aggressively as Earth elementals, their Winter's Breath, Cone and Ice effects can be equally disruptive, especially against grounded enemies without strong movement options. Water elementals both deal strong damage and amplify your entire party's output, making them a core component of any synergy-focused summoning build. Fire elementals are best used as burning enablers. Their basic attacks apply burning with no saving throw, and they can spread flames through erupting cinder, which creates burning surfaces. While burning is essential for triggering brittle, fire elementals are easily replaced by spells or items that can apply the same effect. That said, their multi-attack still hits hard, especially when both fire and bludgeoning vulnerabilities are active, making them a strong option in focused single-target combo setups. They are very useful in brittle combos or steam cloud creation for wet debuffs, but they are still optional. In short, air, best for ranged focused party comps, but easily outscaled by water Myrmidons later. Earth, excellent for zone control and area denial through no save prone effects and mud. Water, highest overall utility, strong damage, brittle enabler and combo driver. Fire, reliable burning applier with good single target potential but easily replaceable. The Water Myrmidon is an elemental warrior forged of flowing water, clad into ornate armor and wielding a trident. It's one of the strongest creatures you can conjure in the entire game. Its base stats are 127 HP, AC 18, resistance to physical and asset damage, and immunity to poison, and it can fly. It's durable, fast, and difficult to pin down. Its abilities offer access to a variety of options. Soothing Waters creates a large water field, heals all entities in its radius for 2 dice 8, or damages poison creatures for 2 dice 8 instead. Hemel Strike is a heavy-hitting melee attack that applies chill on a failed DC 13 Constitution save. If you apply wet to a target that is chilled, it becomes frozen, but not the other way around. Explosive Icicle is castable once per turn. Throw 3 ranged AoE projectiles with 2 meters radius each, dealing 3 dice 8 cold damage per hit and leaving behind ice surfaces. Before patch 8, I would have said the Water Myrmidon is hands down the most overpowered summon you can get, full stop. But with patch 8, its ability to apply wet has been removed. And while this doesn't take away that it's still a very strong support and damage pet, it can't single-handedly drive all wet interactions for your party anymore, bringing it more in line with the other summons. Well, it's still possible, but now you have to build for it. The Water Myrmidon's healing ability still leaves behind a watery surface, and whenever water comes into contact with fire, or vice versa, it creates a steam cloud, and any enemy that passes through these steam clouds become wet. So, while the synergy hasn't been completely removed, it's no longer handed to you on a silver platter. You will need to set it up yourself, for example by combining the Water Myrmidon surface with the Fire Elemental's projectile to generate steam clouds, or by using any other effect that ignites the ground. These clouds can then support your lightning or cold based strategies. It still can apply chill on its own, but it requires now wet from an outside source to freeze enemies. Then there's Explosive Icicle. Each cast averages around 40 damage to every target in the 3 area fields if the attacks hit. And because it's an attack roll rather than a saving throw, you can boost the hit chance with gear, spells or buffs. It also freezes the ground, creating difficult terrain around each impact. Now imagine a team of 4 Water Myrmidons. All of them fire Explosive Icicle, and now you're looking at around 160 cold damage per turn. Or more if RNG is with you, in AoEs, before any vulnerability or debuff stacking. If you can reapply wet on top of that, enemies are going to melt. And if that wasn't enough, Water Myrmidons also heal. Their Soothing Waters ability heals 2 dice 8 per turn, and it scales beautifully with multiple summons. 1 Myrmidon healing averages 8 HP per turn. 4 Myrmidons are sitting at 32 HP per turn in AoE, which is already strong. But we can increase that drastically. We cover that later in the spell synergy section in part 6 of the Summoner's Handbook. So whether you are building around freezing the ground, AoE cold spam or support healing, the Water Myrmidon fits. And if you want to do all of those things at once, well then you should cast haste on your Water Myrmidon, but that works as well. Even after the nerfs, this is a very strong summon. The Air Myrmidon is a figure sculpted from a tempest, wrapped in armor, wielding a crackling electric flail and designed for mobility, lockdown and battlefield control. Like most of its elemental Myrmidon kin, it can fly, giving it incredible maneuverability in combat. It comes with 117 HP, AC 18 and boasts resistances to physical, lightning and thunder damage, along with poison immunity, making it reasonably durable. Its standard attack deals moderate damage, but its true utility lies in its electric flail maneuver, a special attack that deals heavy damage and can stun targets on a failed DC 13 Constitution save. If the flail hits a wet surface, it also electrifies the area. Then there's Raging Vortex, the Air Myrmidon signature ability. This spell-like effect creates a large radius storm field that silences all creatures inside and deals 2 dice 8 damage per turn without a saving throw. However, there's a limit. Only one Raging Vortex can exist at a time, no matter how many Air Myrmidons you have on the field. That means stacking them just for the vortex doesn't work. Where the Air Myrmidon really shines is in supporting terrain-based builds. If your team is setting up zones like Hangar Fader, Spike Rose or Web, the Myrmidon can drop its Raging Vortex right on top, creating overlapping debuff zones that are a nightmare for enemies to cross. Its other major utility is stun locking. While the DC 13 on the Flave isn't particularly high, multiple Myrmidons targeting the same enemy over several turns can dramatically increase the odds of locking down a priority target. And finally, there's one more trick it has in stock: invisibility. Once per short rest, the Air Myrmidon can turn invisible, allowing you to position it perfectly for an ambush. Walk it right into melee range, and the moment it attacks, you start the battle with a free surprise round for your team. The Fire Myrmidon is exactly what you would expect if you would capture a Raging Inferno and forge it into a solid armor. It's aggressive and burning with a never-ending wrath. It's built to engage in melee, bringing both single target and area of effect options to the fight. It can fly, it can teleport via elemental warp, and it comes with solid stats. 123 HP, AC 18, resistance to physical damage and immunity to fire and poison. Its standard melee attack deals moderate damage, but it's backed up by 2 more impactful abilities. Scorching Strike is a hard-hitting melee weapon action that can apply burning on a failed DC 13 save. Cinderous Strike, a cone-shaped AoE dealing 11 to 31 fire damage, useful for clearing clustered enemies. But its signature move is Myrmidon's Immolation, a self-buff that casts haste for 3 turns, requiring concentration and ending with a turn of lethargy. It sounds great on paper, but the actual value is a little bit underwhelming. Let's break it down. Immolation costs an action but refunds 1 immediately. Over the next 2 turns you gain 1 bonus action per turn thanks to haste. After that, lethargy kicks in and you lose an entire turn's worth of actions. So in total, you only gain 1 net action across the entire cycle. Not useless, but not nearly as impactful as it first seems. And then there's a problem of reliable damage. The save DCs are low. DC 11 for the cone attack and DC 13 for burning. So we'll often see enemies resisting Fire Myrmidon's area attacks and they can't apply burning easily. Applying fire vulnerability is also not easy. Outside of niche combos like Arsonist's Oil on wet targets, it's not something you will apply consistently without building around it. That being said, this summon does have its moments. You can, for example, drop a firewall directly on top of it while facing mostly melee enemies. The Fire Myrmidon will be completely immune to the flames, while enemies that rush in to attack it get roasted by the burning wall. It generally works okay as an out-of-the-box summon, without many synergies to set up effectively or to exploit. And the 1 extra action is better than nothing. In summary, the Fire Myrmidon falls a little bit short compared to its peers. The Earth Myrmidon is a towering sentinel of stone and steel. It shares its high armor class with only a couple of few other summonings that can get into the 20 to 22 range, making it great for anyone wanting to create a living blockade between enemies and your far away backline. It doesn't fly, unlike the other Myrmidons, but it still retains elemental warp and it has access to a burrow-based teleport that combines a teleport move and an area damage effect into one. It comes with 127 HP, AC 18, resistance to physical damage and immunity to poison. And it gets even tankier thanks to its unique ability Mug to Metal, which increases its AC by +2 for 4 turns at the cost of 6 meters of movement speed. That puts it at a whopping AC 20. This makes the Earth Myrmidon perfect for enabling enemy engagements and defensive buff stacking. Its default attack deals very high bludgeoning and thunder damage and can knock enemies prone on a failed constitution save. Its Fludgy Sling is a 3 meter AoE that deals 2 dice 6 damage and creates a mud surface if targets fail a dexterity save. While doing a little bit of damage, its main purpose is slowing enemies down that try to run past it. Its Barrow Teleport also deals 2 dice 8 damage in an AoE on arrival, with a DC 13 dex save to resist. This gives him a way to use his bonus action for increased area damage. That being said, the Earth Myrmidon's AoE abilities are a bit underwhelming in terms of both damage and DC. Neither the Mudfield nor the Tremor effects are likely to swing an encounter on their own. The Earth Myrmidon's default attack consists of thunder and bludgeoning damage, making it able to profit from brittle status like its smaller cousin, the Earth Elemental. It will not hit as hard as the Earth Elemental's multi-attack though. So the Earth Myrmidon may not impress with big damage numbers, but they are the most durable of the Myrmidons and are perfect to be the first one to engage with an enemy or to redirect damage to him by using abilities like Stealth or Sanctuary or just by exploiting proximity. In summary, for general use, Water Myrmidons are the strongest all-around summon. They offer high damage in both single target and area of effect situations, create ground effects that cause prone, and uniquely they can apply chill and even heal allies, making them exceptionally versatile. For more specialized roles, Earth Myrmidons are excellent tanks thanks to their high AC. They are perfect for stacking defensive buffs and either leading the charge or holding their own in a solo or pure Earth Myrmidon squad. Air Myrmidons, on the other hand, shine in difficult terrain setups and can effectively stunlock priority targets, making them strong crowd control options. Fire Myrmidons are rarely the optimal pick in any scenario. While Myrmidons are a clear upgrade in raw stats and ease of use, there are still good reasons to prioritize the smaller elemental summons in specific situations. When properly enabled, base elementals can hit surprisingly hard, sometimes matching or even exceeding Myrmidon damage. However, this requires careful setup using status effects and synergies, which limits team flexibility. Because of this, their effective damage per action is often lower when compared to the more self-sufficient plug-and-play nature of Myrmidons, who require no prep work to perform well. Water elementals stand apart entirely. They are the only source of the brittle status in the game, which enables unique vulnerability combos that no other summon can replicate. This mechanic alone can justify choosing a water elemental over a water myrmidon in synergy-focused builds. Earth elementals may not be as tanky as Earth Myrmidons, but they are far more consistent at applying prone, and their mud zones are generated passively through basic attacks rather than taking up actions. In team-based fights where crowd control is prioritized, Earth elementals can outperform Myrmidons simply by being more disruptive. Myrmidons are better for standalone durability or as early wave units meant to soften enemies before your party joins in, but Earth elementals are stronger combo tools when you are actively coordinating with your team. Fire elementals are much more reliable at applying burning than fire myrmidons, which make them ideal when you specifically need to enable brittle or other fire-based synergies. Their basic attacks guarantee the condition, whereas the myrmidon tools are more situational. So if your build relies on setting things ablaze, the fire elemental may be the better pick. Air elementals are unfortunately in a tough spot. There's no meaningful niche they fill that isn't handled more effectively by other myrmidons. Even their shock effect, which disable reactions, has such a low safety C that it rarely lands, and reaction denial is already widely available through other party abilities. Elementals aren't just the same summon in different colors. Each one comes with distinct abilities and well-defined tactical roles, making them fit into different builds and playstyles. With this knowledge, you now have the tools to bind the elements to your will and shape your entire team around them. Whether it's having a water myrmidon at your side to support your frontline with healing powers, combining it with a fire elemental to enable cold and lightning focused strategies, commanding a group of light clerics who surround enemies with flaming spheres while staying protected by sanctuary, or unleashing a swarm of mud Mephits to distract and stall enemies while your ranged allies pick them off. The elemental battlefield is yours to control. That wraps up part 3 of the Summoner's Handbook. If you missed parts 1 or 2, be sure to check them out. They cover utility summons and necromancy. In the next installment, we will explore the forces of nature, from loyal Beastmaster companions to powerful forest spirits. If you want to dive deeper into how these spells work and how to use them to their fullest potential, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe for more in-depth content.